The alien warriors stood in a wide circle, their glowing eyes fixed on the human. His name was Cole, and he looked out of place among them. He wore no armor, only a dusty jacket and boots worn thin from travel. Around him, the alien warriors were tall, strong, and shining in their ceremonial gear. They whispered and laughed, calling him soft flesh and outsider. But Rixa didn't laugh. She was one of them, taller than Cole, with pale silver skin, long dark braids, and deep golden eyes. She stepped forward without smiling, holding something heavy in both hands. It was a mace, old and massive, made of dark star steel with glowing red symbols carved along its surface. Her voice was calm as she said, "Take it." Cole blinked, confused. "Just take it?" he asked, looking at the weapon. The crowd chuckled, expecting him to drop it in 1 second. It was a tradition among Rixa's people. Outsiders were handed the Mace of Trials, and no one ever held it for more than a breath. It was a trick, a test, a joke played on the weak. Cole reached out and gripped the handle. Instantly, his arms shook under the weight. It felt like holding a mountain. He could feel his knees tremble, sweat forming on his brow. But he didn't let go, not even. For a second, silence fell over the crowd. No one laughed now. Rixa's eyes widened just slightly. She hadn't expected this. By her people's ancient law, any outsider who could hold the mace without dropping it was no longer just a guest. He was a chosen mate. It wasn't a joke anymore. It was tradition, and tradition couldn't be broken. Cole finally set the mace down carefully, breathing hard. "What now?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Before Rixa could answer, one of the elders stepped forward. His voice was deep and serious. "Now, he must face the challenge of strength," the crowd murmured, some excited, others angry. They didn't want a human to touch their sacred customs. But rules were rules, and the challenge must happen. Cole was taken to the trial grounds, an open arena surrounded by spiked stones and ancient statues. Rixa walked beside him in silence. Her expression unreadable. He finally spoke. "You didn't think I'd hold it, did you?" She stopped walking and replied, "No one ever has." Then she turned and left him at the edge of the arena. Inside, a creature waited. It was tall, four-armed, and wrapped in chains, one of the training beasts used to test young warriors. It roared and pounded its fists into the ground, making the stone floor crack. Cole stared at it, then looked at the small blade the guards gave him. It looked like a toy in his hand. A horn sounded, and the chains were released. The beast charged. Toward him with terrifying speed, Cole rolled to the side just in time, heart pounding. He knew he couldn't match its strength, but maybe. He didn't have to. As the beast charged again, Cole ran, not to escape, but toward the wall where the chains were attached. He remembered what Rixa had said before. "Don't just fight. Think." Cole picked up one of the heavy chains, looped it around a broken stone, and waited. When the beast came charging a third time, Cole dodged and pulled the chain. The beast tripped, roared, and slammed into the stone wall hard, shaking the ground. The crowd gasped. Rixa's eyes followed Cole as he walked back, dragging the chain behind him like a war banner. He didn't kill the creature, but he defeated it without brute strength. He had used his mind. The elder stepped forward again, placing a hand on Cole's shoulder. "By law, he has passed," the elder announced. Some warriors cheered, some stayed silent, and a few looked away in anger. But none could deny what they saw. Rixa approached him slowly, her eyes softer now. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. Cole looked at her and replied, "Maybe not, but I wanted to." She stared at him for a moment longer, then nodded. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not just duty or tradition, but something warmer, something human. The challenge of strength was over, but their story was just beginning. The firelight danced across the tent walls as Cole sat alone, staring at his blistered hands. The mace had left deep red marks across his skin, but that wasn't what bothered him. It was the silence, the way the warriors looked at him like he didn't belong and never would. He had passed the challenge of strength, but still felt like a stranger in a world carved from stone and flame. A soft sound behind him made him turn quickly. It was Rixa, stepping quietly into his tent, her armor gone, replaced by a soft, dark robe. She looked different without the sharp metal and glowing crest. Softer, quieter, like the warrior mask had been removed. Cole said nothing. Unsure if she came to scold or congratulate him, Rixa sat down across from him, her golden eyes watching the flicker of the fire. "My people," she said slowly, "have not had an outsider touch the Mace in 400 years. Cole blinked, unsure how to respond. "I didn't know it was sacred," he finally said. "I thought it was just a challenge." Rixa gave a quiet laugh, almost sad. "It used to mean something," she said. "It was once a bond of unity, not just strength." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "But now, it's become a joke, a test, for humiliation, something to laugh at when outsiders fail." She looked up at him. "But you didn't fail." Cole shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't come here to take part in rituals or courtship," he said honestly. Rixa nodded slowly. "I know," she whispered. "But tradition doesn't care what we plan." There was silence again, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. Cole looked at her carefully. "Why did you pick me?" Rixa hesitated, then answered. "Because I remembered you." Cole's brow furrowed. "From where?" Rixa looked into the fire, her voice softer now. "Months ago, during the Battle of Red Scar," she said. "My cousin was trapped under rubble and no warrior helped her." She paused. "But a human did. He pulled her free even while being shot at." Cole's eyes widened, the memory flashing back. "I didn't know she was your cousin," he said. "She told me your name." Rixa said. "Cole, the human who didn't run." He leaned back, feeling the weight of her words settle in. "So you chose me because of that?" he asked. "I chose you because you risked everything for someone you didn't even know." Rixa replied. "That's rare, even among my people." She stood slowly, her eyes locked on his. "I didn't think you'd hold the mace," she admitted. "But I hoped." Her voice trembled just a little. "I hoped because I'm tired of warriors who only chase glory." Cole watched her, unsure of what to say. Rixa took a deep breath. "Tomorrow you must face the next trial. The Walk of Ember." "Let me guess," Cole said. "More pain?" Rixa gave him a faint smile. "Yes, but this time it's about balance, not brute force." She turned to leave, then paused at the entrance. "Cole," she said without turning back, "I don't expect you to stay, not forever. But if you pass this next trial, the elders may allow you a choice." "What kind of choice?" he asked. Rixa looked over her shoulder, her eyes glowing softly in the firelight. "To walk away. Or stay beside me." She vanished into the shadows, leaving Cole staring at the flames. Outside, the alien wind howled across the stone plains, but inside the tent it was warm. He didn't know what the trials meant. Not completely. But for the first time since landing on this world, he felt something pulling him forward, not pushing him out. He thought about Rixa's words, about the history behind the mace, about her people slowly forgetting who they were. He thought about how tired her voice sounded, not with her body, but with her heart. Maybe this wasn't just about trials or tradition. Maybe it was about giving something lost a second chance. The next morning the sun rose pale and red over the cliffs. Cole stepped out of his tent, his body sore but his spirit awake. Warriors watched him, some with respect, others with anger. He walked past them, calm and steady, toward the platform where Rixa waited. She didn't speak, only nodded and handed him a new set of light armor. It wasn't human-made. It was crafted from woven ember hide, smooth and warm, a symbol that he was no longer just a visitor. As he took it, Cole met her gaze. "No matter what this trial is," he said, "I'll finish it." Rixa smiled softly. "I know." And in that quiet moment, beneath a rising, alien sun, the human and the warrior girl began to understand each other. Not through words, but through fire, silence, and the courage to stand still when everyone else runs. The wind was dry and full of ash as Cole followed Rixa up the narrow path carved into the black cliffs of Ardra. The sky above was stained orange, and thick smoke drifted lazily from cracks in the rocks. Below them, the training fields and tents looked small, like toys forgotten in the dust, but ahead was fire. Rixa walked silently, her armor replaced by a dark cloak that fluttered behind her. Cole's breath was shallow as heat rose from the rocks. He wiped sweat from his face, but it didn't help. The heat wasn't just around him. It was inside him too, like the world was breathing fire into his lungs. They stopped at a narrow stone ledge overlooking a pit of glowing embers. At the center of the pit was a bridge, if it could be called that, made of thin, cracked stones floating above boiling lava. Rixa turned to him, her expression unreadable. "This is the trial of fire," she said. "Each step must be your own. No help, no tricks." Cole looked at the narrow path, then back at her. "What happens if I fall?" he asked. "You burn," Rixa said simply. "But worse than that, you will not be remembered." Cole swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. "Others have done this?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "but few return." He looked down at his hands, still healing from the challenge of strength. His body was sore, his spirit uncertain. But turning back wasn't in his blood. Rixa stepped aside, her golden eyes fixed on him. "When you're ready," she said, her voice soft now, almost caring. Cole nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the first stone. The heat slammed into him like a wall. His boots almost slipped, and for a terrifying second he thought he'd fall. But he steadied himself, eyes forward, heart pounding. The crowd above was silent, watching from the cliffs, waiting for him to fail. Each step was harder than the last. The stones shifted slightly under his weight as if alive, testing him. Lava bubbles burst below, sending up waves of searing air that burned his skin. His vision blurred, but he kept moving, one step at a time. He remembered Rixa's voice in his head. "Don't just fight, think." So he stopped for a moment, not out of fear, but to listen. The stones hummed, not randomly, but in rhythm. A pattern. He waited, then stepped only when the stone beneath his foot vibrated slightly. One by one, using timing instead of force, he crossed nearly halfway. Above, Rixa watched with narrowed eyes, surprised at his method. No one had done it like this before, not even her. A strong gust of wind pushed him sideways suddenly, nearly throwing him off. He dropped to his knees, gripping the edge of the stone as sweat poured from his face. His body begged to give up, but his heart wouldn't listen. He remembered his home on Earth, his father's voice saying, "Stand for something, even when it hurts." With a growl, Cole pushed himself back up. His legs screamed, his hands blistered again, but he kept going. The last 3 stones seemed to stretch farther apart, too far for normal steps. He crouched low, then jumped. Landing hard, his knee slamming into the edge, pain shot through him like lightning. But he didn't fall. One more jump, one more breath, and with a final shout, he leapt to the edge of the cliff on the far side. He rolled across the rock, chest heaving, flames behind him and silence around him. Then, cheers. The warriors above roared, some out of shock, some in genuine awe. He had done it. Rixa walked down slowly to meet him. She offered him a water skin without a word, and he drank deeply. His voice cracked as he looked up at her. "Still think I'm soft flesh?" She gave a rare smile, not wide but real. "No," she said quietly. "Now I think you're made of flame." They stood together on the edge of the fire pit as the sun dipped behind the jagged rocks. The trial of fire was more than a test. It was a message that even in a world shaped by heat, stone, and war, a human could rise, not by being stronger than everyone else, but by refusing to break. Later that night, the warriors lit a ceremonial flame in his honor. No human had ever earned that fire. Elders came to speak with him, asking questions, offering advice. But Cole's eyes searched for only one person, Rixa. He found her standing alone near the edge of the camp, watching the stars. He walked up beside her, saying nothing at first. "I wasn't supposed to care," she said finally, her voice low. But now, I do. Cole didn't reply. Not with words. Instead, he placed his burned hand over hers, not gripping, not claiming, just being there. And in that quiet moment, between stars and flame, something ancient stirred between them, something older than war, older than tradition, something called trust. The camp was alive with energy, but Cole felt something strange in the air. He had passed 2 trials, earned the fire honor, and now even the coldest warriors nodded when he walked by. Yet Rixa seemed distant that morning, her words short, her eyes always looking beyond the horizon. Cole couldn't understand why. Not until the war horn blew, low and long, echoing through the canyons, from the north gate. A group of armored warriors arrived on long walking beasts. They wore black and bronze armor, symbols of high rank burned into their chest plates. One rider dismounted slowly, taking off his helmet to reveal a scarred face and sharp blue eyes. He looked at Cole like he was a fly on the edge of a blade. Then he turned to Rixa and smiled. "Commander." "Dravan," one of the elders said, bowing slightly. Dravan didn't bow back. He walked straight to Rixa and stopped close, too close. "I heard the Mace has chosen," he said, voice like stone grinding on metal. "But surely it chose wrong." Rixa's jaw tightened, but she didn't step back. "You were gone 3 seasons," she replied. "The laws moved on without you." Draven's eyes flicked to Cole. Then, back to Rixa. "I left to fight the border war," he said, "and returned to find a human trying to claim what isn't his." Cole stepped forward, not aggressively but firmly. "I didn't claim anything," he said. "I was tested and I passed," Draven smirked. "You passed smoke and illusions," he said, "but you haven't faced a real warrior." The crowd grew quiet. Everyone knew what was coming. Even Rixa closed her eyes for a moment as if silently preparing for it. Draven raised his voice, loud enough for all to hear. "By ancient law, I challenge the outsider for the right to stand beside Rixa." Gasps rippled through the warriors. Cole's heart thudded, not with fear but confusion. "Is this what she wants?" he asked, looking at Rixa. She looked back at him, pain behind her golden eyes. "It's not about what I want," she whispered. "It's about what must happen." Later that evening, Rixa found Cole near the training circle. He was sharpening a blade, but his thoughts were elsewhere. She sat beside him, silent for a long time. "You should know," she said. "Draven was promised to me when we were young." Cole looked at her, stunned. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "I didn't come to fight for anyone's hand." Rixa nodded. "I know." She stared at the dirt beneath her feet. "But tradition is a cage and I've been inside it too long." She looked up suddenly, her voice more steady. "But if you fight not for me, not for them, but for yourself." Cole watched her eyes. There was strength there, but also a silent plea. A hope that maybe, just maybe, he could break the chains she couldn't. That night, the training grounds were quiet. Cole practiced alone, his hands moving slow and steady. He wasn't as fast or strong as Draven, but he had something else. He had purpose. He remembered Earth, the days working construction in the cold, when he had no money, no family left. He remembered what it felt like to be looked down on, to be ignored. That feeling, the need to prove he mattered, it was back. But this time it came with fire. Rixa returned just before dawn. She carried a bundle wrapped in cloth and set it down in front of him. Inside was a suit of armor, not alien-made, but a blend of styles, pieces taken from different clans and reforged. "This was my brother's," she said. "He died before he could take the trials." Cole stood still, unsure how to respond. Rixa met his gaze. "He was quiet, like you." She touched the shoulder plate gently. "He believed strength wasn't just muscle, but choice." Cole slowly put the armor on, feeling its weight press into his shoulders. Not heavy like the mace, but meaningful. He turned to Rixa, and for the first time he didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like a warrior. As the sun rose, the arena filled with watchers, elders, soldiers, even the younglings climbed up the stone edges to see the fight. Draven waited in the center, stretching his arms, smiling like a man already writing his victory speech. Cole entered without fanfare, without a weapon, only the reforged armor and a quiet fire in his chest. The duel would happen at moonrise, but the story had already begun, not one of pride or blood, but of a human who never asked to be chosen, and a warrior girl who had waited her whole life to be free. They both stood under laws written long before their birth. But what came next would change those laws forever. The twin moons of Thalara rose slowly over the rocky cliffs, casting silver light across the ancient dueling ground. Two figures stood at opposite ends. One was tall and broad, his armor polished like obsidian, eyes full of pride. The other, leaner, calmer, wore mismatched plates of borrowed armor and stood still, like a mountain before a storm. Cole stared across the ring at Commander Draven, feeling the cold stone beneath his feet and the weight of 1,000 eyes watching from above. Draven flexed his hands, then cracked his knuckles loudly. "The outsider has no sword," he said, voice mocking. "Perhaps he wishes to surrender before he embarrasses himself." Cole said nothing, only tilted his head slightly. He wasn't here for applause or glory. He was here for something stronger. Truth. The elder stepped between them, holding up a glowing staff. "This duel is not to the death," he announced, "but honor must be satisfied." He turned to Cole. "Do you understand what you risk?" "I understand enough," Cole replied, eyes never leaving Draven. The elder lowered the staff and the ring flared with blue light, sealing them inside the ancient combat field. No one could enter until it was over. No one could stop what was coming. Draven moved first, fast, like a falling blade. He swung his heavy war spear toward Cole's ribs, expecting him to block or dodge, but Cole sidestepped smoothly, letting the attack slice air, then shifted his weight to trip the larger warrior. Draven stumbled, but didn't fall. He growled, surprised that Cole wasn't as slow as he looked. The crowd murmured, some impressed, some confused. This human didn't fight like the warriors of Thalara. He didn't roar, didn't strike wildly. He moved like someone who'd learned the hard way, quiet, patient, calculating. Draven attacked again, faster this time, raining down blows with brutal strength. Cole blocked a few, dodged others, and let the rest glance off his reinforced shoulder plate. Pain flared across his arm, but he stayed upright. He didn't fight to win in the first minute. He fought to last. Minutes passed, and the crowd grew restless. Draven began to breathe heavier, sweat forming beneath his helmet. Cole was still standing, still watching, waiting. Then, at the perfect moment, he struck. One step forward, a twist of his body, and his elbow slammed into Draven's side. The larger warrior stumbled back, growling. Cole didn't press forward. He stepped back, giving space. It wasn't about hurting. It was about proving. Draven roared in frustration, now truly angry. "You think this makes you worthy?" He shouted, charging again. Cole ducked, swept his leg, and knocked Draven to one knee. The ring lit up again, showing the human had scored a second point. The elders looked at one another, murmuring. Rixa stood near the edge of the ring, fists clenched, her eyes never blinking. She had seen Draven fight many times. He was skilled, ruthless, fast, but this was different. Cole didn't fight with ego. He fought with purpose. Draven stood again, rage now clouding his form. He threw his spear aside and lunged with bare fists. Cole met him with open hands, blocking, redirecting, absorbing the storm. They grappled, slammed into the stone wall, rolled across the floor. But every time Draven tried to end it with brute strength, Cole used movement, timing, and control. Then came the final blow. Not from rage, but from clarity. Cole ducked beneath a wild punch, grabbed Draven's arm, spun him off balance, and brought him down hard with a simple twist. Draven hit the ground with a thud, chest heaving, eyes wide. The ring glowed gold, signaling the end. The crowd fell silent. The elder stepped in, raised his staff, and spoke loudly. "By the laws of trial and strength, the human Cole has won the duel." Gasps echoed across the cliffs, followed by quiet, unsure claps. Then more cheers, then full celebration. Cole stood slowly, breathing hard but calm. Draven lay on his back, stunned, defeated, not by power, but by grace. Rixa stepped forward and met Cole at the edge of the ring. Her eyes were full of something new, not duty, not pride, but hope. "You didn't fight for me," she said softly. "You fought for what was right." Cole nodded. "I didn't want to take anything," he said. "I just wanted to stand beside you." Behind them, the elders whispered. Never before had tradition bent like this. Never had a human earned a place without claiming or conquering. He had respected their customs, but redefined their meaning. That night, there was no feast, no loud celebration. But Rixa walked beside Cole, their steps slow and steady under the light of the twin moons. Warriors stepped aside to let them pass, some bowing slightly, others just watching. For the first time, Cole wasn't an outsider. He was something more, not chosen by accident, but accepted by proof. And in Rixa's eyes, there was no more doubt, only belief. The sun rose slowly over the mountain ridge, painting the stone cliffs in gold and fire. The trial was over, and the name Cole was no longer spoken with doubt. The warriors of Thalara now looked at him differently, not as a guest, not even as a rival, but as something rare among them, a chosen one who never asked to be chosen. Cole stood alone near the sacred fire, watching the flames crackle and shift. His body ached from the duel. Bruises bloomed across his arms and ribs. But his mind was calm. He had won the challenge, proven his strength, earned their respect. And yet, deep inside, he wasn't sure what he wanted next. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed over the stone. Rixa approached, wearing a simple tunic instead of her usual armor. Her eyes were gentle now, no longer guarded, no longer full of silent battles. "You stood your ground," she said quietly. "Even when everything was stacked against you?" Cole smiled faintly. "Didn't feel like I had much of a choice." "You always had a choice," Rixa replied. "You just didn't run." They sat together by the fire, not speaking for a while. Above them, banners flapped gently in the morning wind. From a distance, the elders watched, silent, waiting. As tradition demanded, soon, a final decision would be made. After the third trial, Rixa said, "You're offered a place in the council, or the chance to leave, free and honored." Cole nodded slowly. "And what happens if I stay?" She looked at him, voice softer than before. "Then by tradition I become yours." Cole went quiet, eyes on the flames. The weight of her words settled deep in his chest. He didn't want to own anyone, not her, not anyone. And yet, he understood that to Rixa's people this bond wasn't about control. It was about unity, shared strength, legacy. "Is that what you want?" he asked finally. Rixa didn't answer right away. "I used to think love was weakness," she said. "But now I think it's just another kind of courage." She stood up, brushing dust from her legs. "When the bell tolls at midday, you must walk to the circle of vows and speak your choice." "And if I don't go?" Cole asked. "Then it means you've already chosen to leave," she whispered, before walking away into the golden light. Midday came fast, and the circle of vows stood high on the cliff, carved from ancient blackstone. Warriors lined the sides. Elders stood in the center, and Rixa waited at the far edge alone. The bell rang once, its echo stretching across the valley. But Cole wasn't there. Minutes passed, whispers grew, the elders exchanged looks. Rixa stood still, her eyes forward, even as her hands trembled slightly. She didn't cry, she didn't break. But inside, the silence hurt more than any blade. Then, soft footsteps echoed from the back. Cole appeared, walking through the crowd in his patched armor, dust on his boots, sweat on his brow. The whispering stopped, replaced by stunned silence. He stepped into the circle, looked at Rixa, then turned to the elders. "I didn't come here to take anyone," he said loudly. "I didn't come to win or to lead or to wear a crown." He paused, looking around at the warriors who had once doubted him. "I came here by accident, but I stayed by choice." He looked at Rixa. "And I'll continue staying, also by choice." The elders nodded, murmuring among themselves. The eldest among them raised his staff, voice strong and clear. Then, by the rights of tradition and the will of the chosen, the bond is formed. A roar of approval rose from the warriors. Drums began to beat, the flames burned higher. But Cole didn't hear them. He only saw Rixa, walking toward him slowly, her eyes wide, her lips trembling with a smile that had waited too long. She reached out, placing her hand on his chest over his heart. And he did the same, palm to palm. No words needed, because the bond wasn't forged by strength or trial. It was forged by choice. Later that evening, while the camp celebrated, Cole and Rixa sat together beneath the stars. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. He looked up at the sky, then down at her. "You still think I'm a soft flesh outsider?" Rixa smiled without opening her eyes. "No," she whispered. "You're fire, and fire belongs here." The wind carried their laughter into the night. Above them, the twin moons glowed brighter than ever, and far beyond, in the stars. Tradition quietly stepped aside to make room for something new. The fire had burned low by morning, its glowing embers casting soft light across the quiet camp. The songs had faded, the drums had gone silent, and the warriors had returned to their tents. But Cole was still awake, standing at the edge of the cliffs, the wind brushing through his hair. He held the ancient mace in both hands, not as a weapon now, but as something more, something sacred. Behind him, Rixa approached slowly, her steps quiet over the stone. She wore no armor, no symbols of war, just a simple cloak woven with her family's crest, the same crest that was etched into the side of the mace he now held. "You're still thinking," she said softly, stopping beside him. "I've never held anything that meant so much," Cole replied, his eyes not leaving the horizon. "This isn't just metal, it's memory," Rixa nodded. "It belonged to my mother and her mother before her. Before it became a test," she added, "it was given only to those we trusted with our lives." She looked at him, her voice low and honest. "And I gave it to you, not to trick you, but to see if your hands were steady when no one was watching." Cole slowly lowered the mace and turned toward her. "You could have warned me," he said with a small smile. Rixa smiled back. "And ruin the tradition?" She teased, then grew serious. "But tradition must change now." Together they walked back toward the center of camp, where a gathering was forming again. This time, it wasn't for a trial, or a challenge, or a duel. It was for something that hadn't happened in generations. A rewriting of the law. The eldest of the council stood at the head of the circle, his staff planted firmly in the ground. "Today," he announced, "we do not choose who leads or who follows. Today we honor a different strength, the courage to unite two worlds." He stepped aside, and Rixa and Cole stepped forward, side by side. The warriors stood quietly, watching with unsure eyes. Old traditions had always guided them, but now something unfamiliar was blooming in front of them. "Change." The elder turned to Cole. "You came as an outsider," he said, "yet you held the mace, passed the trials, and faced one of our strongest in combat. You proved you are more than human. But now," he continued, "you are given a choice not by blade or fire but by spirit. Will you remain with us not as warrior alone, but as bond partner to Rixa, keeper of our legacy and guardian of the new path?" Cole looked at Rixa, and Rixa looked back, no fear in her eyes, no doubt. "Only truth, I will," Cole said simply. "Not because I want a challenge," he added, "but because I found something here worth protecting." A cheer rose. Slow at first, then stronger. The warriors shouted Cole's name, some with pride, others with acceptance. Even those who had once mocked him now nodded. Recognizing what had grown between him and Rixa wasn't forced. It was real. Rixa stepped forward and lifted the mace high, the sunlight catching the carved symbols along its shaft. She placed it into Cole's hands again, but this time he didn't tremble. He held it with ease, his arms strong, his mind clear, because it wasn't a test anymore. It was a promise, Later, the two of them walked through the edge of the valley where wildlight trees grew tall and twisted. Cole picked one of the bright blue leaves, holding it up. "You know," he said, "back home I never believed in fate." Rixa laughed. "That sounds very human." "But maybe," he added, "it's not about fate. It's about standing in the right place when the wrong world tries to push you down." She leaned her head against his shoulder as they walked. "I never thought I'd walk beside someone not born of our soil," she whispered. "But you didn't just step into my world," she said. "You helped rebuild it." As night fell, the sky above glittered with unfamiliar stars, but Cole no longer felt like a visitor. He had crossed fire, stone, blood, and silence, not to take something, but to give it meaning. And in return, he found love, belonging, and a future where two worlds could become one. And so by blade and bond, by tradition and by choice, a human and an alien warrior rewrote the story of an ancient people, not with war, but with heart. And under the twin moons of Thalara, their names would be carved into legend, not because they were strong, but because they stood together when no one believed they could.